This episode of Spines is brought to you by Chasing the Demon, a new novel from Paul Satine. Jared Strong has been haunted by a monster since childhood. Now he's given up everything to capture the elusive beast. But powerful people want to stop him. He must choose between focusing on his crumbling marriage or giving everything he has for this last chance to prove the monster exists, even as he is threatened on all sides. Pre-order your copy of Chasing the Demon now, available on Amazon. Hey, Ren. It's your old buddy, Ren. You're probably pretty surprised to hear this. Actually, scratch that. I know you're surprised to hear this because I remember being surprised to hear it. I remember where I was when I heard this, where you are. You're sitting on the ground. You're thinking it's the end. You can't look Shan in the eye. I remember all of that. But I also know you're going to make it. You're going to make it because I did. And I lived long enough to sit down and record this for you. So, sit back, relax, and let me tell you a little bit about the year 2033. This is Spines. I'm going to start by telling you about my day so far. Today I woke up next to Shan, the way I have every morning for 15 years. I got breakfast from our fruit tree in the yard, one that Shan designed for us. Then I went out and I did some work for the other folks in our commune. Today was pretty easy. Someone's garden got flooded, so I pulled the water out and channeled it toward the river. Someone else needed to retrieve their dog after it escaped from their yard, so I slowed time enough to catch up with it. This work I do, that everyone does, it's more of a barter system than for pay. Currency kind of stops having meaning when you have people who can assemble a new computer system out of random matter, when there are people who can heal your cancer with a touch, when a beautiful dryad has created a continent of fruit trees that supply all the food we could ever need. Once the 1% couldn't control what we needed anymore, their reign ended pretty fast. Now we mostly live in small communes. We owe our community our gifts, and in exchange, we get access to everyone else's gifts. There are a lot of casualties of the awakening, but capitalism's one of the ones that isn't really missed. After I did the work people needed, I went to visit Winry. She has a wife and a daughter now, a beautiful little girl named Kira. The awakening brought out a few gifts in Winry, but most of what she does these days involves making quantum computers with not much more than a glance. Figures. There's a playground at the center of our commune. It was built by an anti-gravity gifted named Joe. It floats, a giant sphere a few feet off the ground. Playground equipment is arranged around the inside of the sphere, so kids step inside and bounce from place to place. They float instead of fall, and no one worries about their safety. Kids this age don't really understand how dangerous the world used to be. Winry and I watched Kira play for a while, and talked about mundane little things, gossip around the commune. For a little while, we speculated about what Kira's gifts are going to be. Most gifts don't show up until puberty, so kids Kira's age are pretty much the way kids used to be back in the day. Speculating is pretty pointless. Gifts don't really have much to do with whatever abilities the parents have, and there's no way to tell from appearance or interests or talents. Still, this is what people wonder about now when they wonder about their children. It used to be people asked whether little Johnny would be a doctor or a football player or an astronaut. Now, like Winry and I did today, we wonder whether Kira will be a pyrokinetic or an anatomorph, or whether she'll command the movements of hydrogen molecules. We imagined all the things she might be, whether she might grow wings or extra limbs, or whether she'll never age past the point she's at now. This probably sounds like an anxious, fearful conversation where you are now. It's not. People have learned that most gifts are nothing to fear, and that most children adjust to their new powers without a lot of difficulty. It's amazing the things you get used to. Just as I was about to leave, Winry turned to me. "You're making the message soon, aren't you?" she said. "I know you make it after a day where you come to the park with me and Kira. I remember that part." I nodded and told her I thought she was right. It felt like today was the day. And she smiled and she gave me the message that she remembers receiving. "Will you tell the old me something?" she asked. "Tell her it's gonna be okay. Truly okay. Even though where she's at, it doesn't feel like it'll ever be okay again. Also, don't use my wife's name. Or anything about what she's like. I don't want to spoil the surprise. So make sure you pass that message along, Ren. Tell Winry what her future self has, and that it's gonna be okay." And as far as her wife goes, I don't think there's a lot of mystery once they lay eyes on each other. It's a pretty obvious first sight kind of thing. Still, pretend you don't see right through it. It'll help preserve some of the mystery. After I hung out with Winry, I teleported to a commune in what used to be Buenos Aires to help out with a project for friends that you won't meet for another 7 years. There aren't that many airplanes, not anymore. I still can't take anyone with me when I teleport, but there are gifteds who can move a whole busload of people from one continent to another with a snap of their fingers. They have their days full moving people around. That's another thing that more or less came to an end with the Awakening. The nation-state. Some national borders still exist in some places, but they're not fooling anybody. Pretty much anyone can find a way to get anywhere in the world anytime they want. You might be wondering right now, what happens to the rest of the Splinter once Iris is dead and the trumpet sounds? I know right now you're angry enough to hope for some terrible vengeance. But the truth is, they stop being important, and it stops being important to you. Once the trumpet sounds, as you're gonna find out really soon, there are new things to worry about, and you're gonna forget about them pretty fast. I'm guessing most of the Splinter died very quickly after the trumpet sounded. A lot of them are probably dead already as you listen to this, at least the ones in the main lab. There are rumors that the creature that was the trumpet, this creature that made its call and awakened all of these gifts, there are rumors that that creature was far more monstrous than its mother, that it ripped apart not only the building, but an entire city block, feeding on everything it found. I doubt many members of the Splinter got away from that. Like I said, though, you'll stop thinking about them pretty soon. Other things are going to occupy your attention. I want to be clear about something. The fact that we have this world now, it doesn't mean Iris was right. It doesn't mean she was justified. Nothing could ever make up for what she did. And I would never have chosen the carnage that comes right after the trumpet sounds. What you're about to see. I don't forgive Iris, and I never will. Again, this does not mean she was right. All it means is that you get past it and you survive, and that things get better eventually. At the end of my day, I came home. Our house is inside a giant tree that Shan grew. Every part of the house grown naturally as part of the tree's trunk rather than cut into the wood. Shan and I made our dinner, and we told stories about our day. And then we listened to music being played in what used to be Portugal, broadcast by the singer's will alone. And then, like most nights, we climbed up onto the roof and we watched the sky. Ren, wait until you see what the sky looks like now. There's no more industry, no more smog. So the stars are so much brighter, but it's more than that. There are gifteds who don't need oxygen to survive. Gifteds who can protect their bodies against the chill of space. Gifteds who can feed off of solar radiation alone. They've made homes in the orbit around Earth, in space stations and satellites. New moons. You can see them at night, floating above us. There are some who have set out for other planets. They solved all of the technological problems preventing deep space travel. And they built ships and they gathered colonists. They found gifteds who could scout out planets from afar, who could reach out across the stars with their consciousness and find new homes there. They're flying through space like comets right now. And the people who will reach these new planets will be so different from what we were 15 years ago. When we'd had enough of the sky, Shan turned to me and said, "Today's the day, isn't it?" And I said yes, and we went back inside, and I started recording this. Shan has their arms around me right now, as I'm speaking, and they look a little sad as they remember the time you're in and the things you're gonna see. As you listen to this, Ren, I want you to touch Shan's face. I want you to look into their eyes. If you remember nothing else, remember this. This is the face that's gonna guide you and keep you strong and give you a reason to survive when nothing else matters. This is the face that's going to save you over and over again. You're going to owe Shan more than you're ever going to be able to repay, and they never once make you feel the weight of that debt. Touch their face and let their vines curl around your wrists, and you'll know I'm telling the truth. After I finish recording this message, I'm gonna have to get up and do one more thing before I return to my spot in bed next to Shan. You've probably got at least a general idea of what this is, since the message is there with you in 2018. You know, the last thing I have to do after I record this is give the message to Zachary. Zachary doesn't live in my community. He survives the wars to come, and in some ways, he's much more at peace than when you know him. But things are going to happen to him that make it hard for him to be around a lot of other people. Whenever I want to see him, I have to teleport to a plateau in what used to be the Utah desert. In the middle of this plateau is a circle of huts, kind of like Mongolian yurts. Different people are living there every time I visit. Zachary's the only permanent resident. The rest are the unlucky kind of awakened. The ones whose gifts rage out of control. The ones who possess abilities that are more of a curse than a blessing. For every dozen or 100 people who gain the ability to fly or heal or see into the future, there's one whose consciousness comes untethered from their body, one whose dreams set their bedroom on fire, one whose skin unzips and falls to the floor when they're threatened. Zachary helps those people now. He teaches them and comforts them, and he accepts them when others won't. He usually can't fix all of their problems, but they leave his monastery a little bit more whole than when they got there. Actually, you know what? I have to amend something I said before. Zachary's one of 2 permanent residents. The other's Akira. That little frog is still alive after all these years. He decided to go with Zachary when he settled in and started his retreat. He has a soothing effect on the residents, like a little therapy frog. Holding him has stopped people from summoning hurricanes, opening portals to other universes, shedding their humanity entirely. He's probably saved the world more than once, to be honest. And he keeps Zachary company. Bilal's actually shown up there a few times, so I think Akira helps him keep an eye on things. I'm not sure what Zachary will say when I show up tonight. I imagine him coming out of his yurt and joining me at the center of the ring of huts. I imagine him looking up at the sky, the same sky that Shannon and I watched earlier. I imagine him asking if tonight's the night, and I'll tell him yes. Then I imagine him looking at me and asking something like, "Are you going to tell her everything?" And I'll have to shake my head and admit that I'm not, even though he already knows what's on this recording. And then he and I will look at each other and not say anything, and we'll both remember some of the things I'm not telling you. Some of the terrible days that I can't bring myself to talk about. And some of the transcendent ones that I wouldn't dream of spoiling for you. He and I will take a minute to remember those days, and then I'll hand over this recording, and he'll make one of those rips in time and space and drop it through. After that, we'll say goodnight, and I'll come home and crawl into bed next to Shan. I'm telling you this, Ren, so that you have a beacon. I know how important this beacon is going to be to you. I know that you have terrible times ahead. Times when you think you're going to die. Times when you want to. But you won't. Because you have this perfect day to look forward to. This world that you're going to live to see. This is going to carry you, and I know that because it carried me. Thing is, though, this world I live in now, it doesn't just happen. It has to be fought for. You have so many battles ahead of you. And some of them you're gonna lose. You're going to try to save the place that used to be Australia, and you're going to fail. That land and all of its people are trapped under a single continuous sheet of diamond, placed there by an enraged and power-mad New Gifted. Warlords are going to emerge and tear apart most of the East Coast before you and Shan lead an army against them. Half of India is just going to disappear and leave a new swath of ocean behind. Most of the population of the Scandinavian countries fell into some kind of trance just after the trumpet sounded, and they never came out of it. Millions are going to die, but the world survives. You're realizing something now. You're realizing that this isn't the story you thought it was. When all this began, you thought this was the story of star-crossed lovers finding each other again. Then you found Shan, and you realized that wasn't true. Then you thought this was the story of the girl who saved the world, but it's not. And for a few hours, you've been thinking that this is the story of how the world ends. It's not that either. This is the story of how a new world gets made. So now it's time to begin. It's time for you to get up and dust yourself off and dry your tears. It's time for you to take Shan by the hand and stand shoulder to shoulder with Zachary and help Winry through the changes racking her body and her mind as we speak. It's time for you to get ready. Most of all, though, it's time for you to picture this new world. This new world you want instead of the one you live in. And fight for it. Good night, Ren. This world will be waiting for you when you get here. It's waiting for you, and it's beautiful. Spines is a production of Zoom Doom Stories. It's narrated by Ren Jones, written by Jamie Killen, website and logos by Benjamin Pond, produced by Jamie Killen and Benjamin Pond. You can support Spines by visiting patreon.com/Spines Podcast and by subscribing and leaving a review on iTunes. Spines is a member of Fate Crafters Studios. Find more great shows at fatecrafters.com. This week we recommend The Fall of the House of Sunshine, a murder, a tooth-obsessed cult, crazed puppets, and singing? Join an adventure of musical proportions with the genre-bending Fall of the House of Sunshine. Smart, absurd, silly, and fun, the show is nerd theater at its finest. It incorporates the silliness of Monty Python, the quirk of Venture Brothers, and the wit of Dirk Gently. That's Fall of the House of Sunshine, available at podmusical.com.